All right, we're live. We are now live. Sorry about that. I had to update the TikTok app like every single time I log in. You have to update it. If you guys are on Facebook, YouTube, drop a one. Let me know if you can hear me. That way I know we can keep going. If you can't hear me, we need to figure that out before we get started. So go ahead and drop a one in the chat if you can hear me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you guys letting me know that. We're going to do something slightly different today. I think it should be fun. We're going to be talking about profit. This is not really a continuation of the podcast because if you listen to the podcast, it's only 5 minutes long and it's just me yelling at you, telling you to take action. So we're going to take action today on your estimates, and we're going to do live estimating. So we're going to take your jobs that you have that you've either getting ready to sell or just sold. We're going to plug them into the calculator. We're going to see where you're at, what you should have been charging, and then go from there. So it should be a little bit different, should be exciting. So if you guys are watching me on TikTok, drop a one in the comments so I know you can hear me on TikTok. And then get ready because we're going to be working on some live estimates. So if you guys got some jobs that you're working on, let's get some numbers and we'll plug it in. Before I get into that, while we're waiting, do me a favor, by the way. If you got a job that you want to throw in the numbers, just throw a two in the chat, and that way I can call on you. We'll kind of get prepared, and that way we can, keep this thing going because I want to try and get as many of these in as we can. So if you got a job, you just want to, if you're just curious, like what you should have bid it for, what kind of profits, we're working on getting the right profits. That's the most important thing. If we don't get the right profits in our business, nothing else matters. It just, I can't even stress how important it is to get the right profit margins in your business, because even if you do everything else wrong, but you have the correct profit margins, you can still have a business that works. If you get everything else right, but you don't have good profit margins, it will always be stressful. It will always be a struggle. 100%. So profit margins are extremely important, right behind mindset. And the reason why it's right behind mindset is because most people don't believe they can get these kind of profits. And so when I start sharing them like, hey, these are the kind of profits you can get in your business, it's like, no, that doesn't work in my area. I can't do that. I can't charge that much. Everyone else is already charging way less and blah, 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 blah. The excuses come rolling in, right? So it's really important to really understand that the mindset, your mindset, is what's holding you back in your business. It's what held me back in my business for many, many years. I was that guy that said that. That may work in big towns, but that don't work in, my town. It doesn't work in my town. It won't work for my customers. It won't work in my industry. Insert your excuse, whatever it is. That's what we always do. And so once I started to change that mindset, and it took me a while. I mean, it was probably at least a year to year and a half to fully convert that mindset to where it's like, okay, yeah, that was just totally wrong, right? You would get glimmers of hope. Somebody on the internet tells you, hey, mark up your prices, charge more, and you go and you mark it up. Maybe you mark it up an extra 10%. You're only at 25% markup, like 25% markup. And then you go in there and you add another 10% and they don't say anything. It's like, oh, okay, well, now I can charge 35% markup. And then they keep telling you, no, you need to be at 100% markup. You need to be at 100% markup. And so then it's like, I don't think so. Maybe I'll try 50% markup, and you do that, and people don't balk, and you're like, okay. And so slowly you start to see wins, and you start to be like, okay, maybe I have been wrong. I've been wrong about this. Excuse me. Will the thrill, yes, residential, and I do have a license. I am a licensed GC. Yes. I didn't build homes though. I just did remodeling. So let's get started on this. I want to throw some real calculations. So I'm going to change my screen here, and we're going to bring up my my calculator here, And I just realized my face is not on TikTok there. Let me put my face in there so you guys can see me. So what we're going to do is do some real live calculating. Hopefully, I know it's a little small on TikTok, but we're going to do some real life calculating. So what I want to do is throw some numbers at me. So if you have a job that you want to kind of just throw in here and see how it's going to work, just throw a 2 in the chat, and then I'll ask you some questions to go with that. But yeah, throw a 2 in the chat if you want to run through this this calculator, and it's going to help you to determine if you're even close to bidding correctly. Spec homes, yeah, depending on the project size, I've done 600% markup. 100, yeah, I say 100%, but yeah, it does obviously depend on the job. And it's funny because like when I did small service work, people call it handyman work. Whenever we did small service jobs, we were easily getting 75, 80% gross profit on those jobs. And then some people will say, well, that may work on big jobs, but it doesn't work on small jobs. And so then you do a big job and you get 100% gross or 100% markup, 50, 55% gross profit. And somebody else says, well, that may work on big jobs, but it doesn't work on small jobs. It doesn't matter if it's small or big. It just works, right? There are always, special use case scenarios where if you're the only person in your town that does your specialty, then yeah, you can mark it up even more, or if there's 1,000 people doing what you do, you may not get as much markup, but you can still get at least a 50%. So there's always going to be special use cases. The problem is that everybody thinks they are the exception. Every single person thinks that their situation is the exception, and that is not true. It is blatant. It is a blatant lie. It is not true. Very few people are the exception. I mean, like less than 5% of the contractors that I talk to are an exception to this rule, but 95% of them think they are the exception. It's just not true. You're kidding yourselves. You're lying to yourselves. You're literally looking in the mirror and telling yourselves a lie so that you feel better about the fact that you're working 75 hours a week and you only make $40,000 a year. Because, I don't want to rip anybody off. Those are all subconscious limiting belief lies that we tell ourselves because it makes us feel good. It makes us be able to cope with the fact that we're doing something wrong. To be blunt, it makes you understand or makes you cope with the fact that you suck at running a business. I mean, let's be real here. And I was that person. So I'm not pointing fingers at you guys saying that you guys suck. I'm saying collectively as contractors, we suck at running a business. Dirty Max, this is not an app. It's just a Google Sheets. I can send it to you, but we're going to do this right now live. So if you got a little project you want to throw in here, I want to do some live demos. So I'm hoping somebody would jump in here and do this. He says, I have this exact mindset. I've been trying to stop. Yeah. Yeah, Spec Holmes, 100%. He says, I'd rather be hungry than tired and hungry. I saw this post this morning. I literally saw this comment this morning where someone says, rule number 1, in your business is to like make good money or something like that. And people start commenting and saying, I'd rather have some money than no money or something like that. Rule number 1, you need to make money. It's better to stay at home and not work than to go work for nothing. And people are like arguing that. Oh no, something's better than nothing. Something's better than nothing. Yeah, Dirty Max. So if you have a project, let's throw it in here. Like I want real numbers. If you've done one recently, if you've done a recent project or one you're bidding on currently, all I need to know is, what your total labor cost is and what your total material cost is. Okay, William's got one. A fence staining contractor. Materials are $9.59. Okay. So let's throw this in here. $9.59. Labor is $75. How is labor only $75, dude? What's your percent? Do you mark it up at all? Do you have any markup, William? Like, do you mark up the materials or do you mark up the labor at all? Or is that just what you charge? Like, is that, and if you mark it up, do you 3 hours times, okay. But do you mark it up any additional cost? Do you add any extra cost onto that, William? Like, do you mark up a percentage of the materials? Do you add a um, just a factor like materials times 1 or times 1.5, or do you do like a percentage like 25% markup? Or if you don't do any markup, that's okay. Just let me know so I can finish this out. Because I want to make sure that we do this right. No markup. That's just what I charge. I have a 50 profit margin. How do you have a 50 profit margin with no markup? So if you're at $1,034 for that, 50% what? 50% profit margin. That's what I'm asking you. How are you coming up with a 50% profit margin if you have no markup? If your materials are 959 and your labor is 75, that gives you a total cost of 1,034, right? With zero markup. That means if that's true, that means you lost $1,034 because there's no markup. That makes sense, William? Where are you getting a 50% margin from? Are you saying that your costs are only you're charging $25 an hour, so your costs are only half of that? Is that what you're saying? Just trying to understand. So you're like 1250. So you're saying your cost is to run your business is $12.50, or that's your labor cost per hour. Because that's the math's not mathing. I'm just trying to understand, William. I'm not like trying to like poke fun at you or anything or make you feel bad. I'm trying to understand how you're doing your math so we can give you some real numbers. Okay, you're bidding it at 1,700. Well, you would need to bid it at 2,068 to get a 50%. 40%, yeah, that might be 40. But to get a 50% profit margin, you would need to sell this job at $2,068. Does that make sense, William? So if you're selling at 17, you're still leaving about $360 on the table. All right, let's go to the next one. Dirty Max says, I'm still figuring out labor right now, trying to stay around 1,000 a day. Well, give me some numbers, guys. Like, if it's 1,000 a day, that's fine. But is that 5 days? Is that 2 weeks? Like, you guys should know roughly what stuff costs you. I understand you may not know the exact dollar amount, but Justin just signed a bathroom contract, tile, shower, blah blah blah. Labor, materials, subs 8,000. Labor 2,000. Materials 8,000. 50% equipment markup total. What? I'm not following you there, Justin. Oh, that's A to Z. That's so Justin, what your 8,000, what's your labor? Justin, what was your labor total on that? I like to break the labor and material separate, not just do one. I mean, I can just do one, but if you're saying it's 8K, labor material subs is 8K. So, okay, so that would be a 50%. So if it's 8K, then um, oh, I can't put K in there. So you're saying you did 100% markup. Yeah. So you would have that's. I mean, that's the correct. No, he said 8K too. A to Z heating air. Justin said 8K at the last. He said labor material subs 8K. You actually you both you guys said 8K. So okay, A to Z. You got labor 2,000, materials 8,000. Is that right? How much markup? The customer already demoed it. Well, that's a bonus. 50% markup or 50% gross profit? 50% markup on the materials. Your materials are at 8K, so you 50% markup. Is that what I'm understanding correctly? So you do a 50% markup on the materials. So if you're doing a 50% markup on the materials and none on the labor, then you potentially lost $6,000. Now I will say this: air conditioning units. That's one of those specialty use case scenarios where you're not always going to get 100% markup on everything, but I do know some contractors that do that. It just again depends on the competition, depends on your market. Okay. So if you landed at 19,000, uh then yeah, you're just under 50%. So that's not bad. It's not bad. Dirty Max. Okay, I missed Dirty Max's so Dirty Max, you got the guest bathroom. Materials are 25, and let's put that in with the sub. So we'll say 4,500. 4,500 for the materials and subs, and then you had what for labor? You had 5K labor. Is there any markup on that? Do you have any markup? 15% markup. Is that on everything or just materials? Is the 15% is that on markup or materials? I mean, is that on everything or just materials? Oh, dude, you're dirty max. You're doing yourself dirty to the max. Is that is that what your username is, Dirty Max? Is because you're doing yourself dirty to the max? Bro, that's $8,800, $8,825 left on the table. On that one job, you screwed yourself out of over $8,000. Now, be honest, Dirty Max. When I tell you that, when I say that you left $8,000 on the table, in your mind, do you instantly think there's no way I could charge that much? When you hear that, do you think there's no way I can charge that much? You hired a manager to set prices and be more firm. I don't think your manager is doing a good job, dude, if you guys are only getting that. That sounds like insurance work. Justin, you don't need a calculator, but the truth is that most people, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of contractors don't even know the difference between a margin and a markup. So a lot of times when I say you need a 50% gross margin, they literally think that means you mark up materials 50%. So as basic as this may seem, you would be absolutely shocked by the number of contractors who don't even know that. And I'm not like trying to like belittle anyone. I'm being serious. I didn't understand that for many years. It's also easy that if you've started a business in the last say 3 to 4 years, all of this information has readily been available on the internet. When people started 20 years ago, none of this information was readily available. So a lot of people had to figure it out. So each generation, the next generation 10 years from now, they won't even be having these conversations because it'll be so common knowledge. Yeah, spec homes. We haven't even got into the overhead conversation yet because honestly, like I just said, this stuff is way like for a lot of contractors, understanding just profit margin and markup is hard for them. So you start adding in like, oh, yeah, you're getting a 50% gross profit, but that's not what you're putting in your pocket, right? Because you got to take your overhead out of it. And you can possibly get a 50% gross profit and still lose money. That is possible because if your overhead is too high, or depending on how you did the job, you could sell a job at a 50% gross profit, but if you only work 2 hours a day for 2 weeks on that job, you still have overhead costs each day, right? And so like you're losing a certain amount of money each day. And so if the job takes way too long, even at a 50% gross profit, you can literally lose money on it. But for most people, as long as you're doing your normal productive, 8, 9 hour day type work, and you're bidding jobs and your labor's correct, and you get a 50% gross profit on your jobs, about 80% of the contractors will do well with that formula, even if they have a little bit inflated overhead, even if their production's a little bit off, you'll still do pretty well. So that's why it's a dumbed down version. It's a dumbed down, easy version of estimating without getting way into the weeds of like productivity, numbers and all that stuff. Yeah. So John, let's give it a whirl, man. I saw you comment. Give me your labor material cost. I know you're not going to be under though, dude. You're going to be way over. $11,694 for materials. 11,694, and labor is 4,960. I don't have this backwards. So what did you what markup did you use, John? By the way, you already knew the answer, like way over, dude. You sold it for 62,500. You only had 15,000. That's like amazing. I don't have this calculator does not calculate what your margin is. It literally just tells you how much money you're losing. You said 100% markup. Oh, you're way over that, dude. If you sold it for 62,000, you sure those numbers are right? Justin said I just started my biz 2 years ago. Can't soak up enough advice. Yeah, it's good, man. Be a student of learning. So Dirty Mac says, "What's the manager going to do for you, Dirty Max?" I'm just curious. And by the way, what do you do, Dirty Max? What do you do? I mean, I know you did a bathroom, but what all do you do? You general contractor? You do bathroom remodels? Do everything? Anybody else have a number they want to run through here? From the windows to the balls. Some of you guys' names crack me up. What's the labor and materials from the windows? Give me a real job you did. Labor cost 16,000. Material cost 24. That's going to be a big one. So your labor, you said your labor is 30% and your materials are 30%. I know you have a 25% markup. Do you do 25% markup on the total? Like, do you do your 30 and 30 and then add 25 on top of everything else? Is that how you do that? So I'm just curious to see how you add because you're adding profit, which is kind of a back end way of doing it, but it could still come out to be the same depending on how you're adding the 25% profit. So you take the total and then add 25% onto the labor and materials. So like a separate 25%. So it's really 55% then, right? If you're adding 25%, then you're really adding 55% to the labor and 55% to the materials. If you're doing that separate. I know you may have a line item that separates them, but effectively you're adding 55% to each. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's change this. So potential on that job, if you were doing 100% markup, the potential lost or you lost $18,000 on that job. If you were getting 100%, 18, not 28. It's right here in the bottom. I know it's hard to see on the phone. Still $18,000. That's just a potential. Again, guys, this is just a rough idea. Um, so yeah, I mean, depending on how long that job took too. Some of these guys are doing month-long jobs and they're losing $18,000. I mean, that's a whole month. It's not as bad when you do like a 2-day job and you only lose $1,500. It's like, it's not terrible, but the bigger the job, the more opportunity you lose because you can only do so many jobs a year. So if you're only doing 12 jobs a year, I know that's not taking you a month, but just using that as an example, if you do 12 times 18, that means you're losing $216,000 a year. by simply undercharging. I'm not a percentage wise guy. A lot of people will say 15%, 10 to 15%, but I don't think it really, the marketing aspect in terms of dollar amount totally depend on your market. It depends on your industry. There's a lot of different things. In my business, in my area, I spent like $100 to $200 a month on Google Ads, and that was it, because I had brand recognition, because I had the marketing side, the marketing engine was working. And so I only needed to spend about $200 a month. That's like nothing. Of the percentage wise, it's like less than 1%. So I'm not a big fan of like, oh, if you do 500,000, you need to spend 10% of that on marketing. It really just depends. It really depends on a lot of factors. Yeah, if you're doing foundation work, for sure you should be getting good money on that, because foundation work's important, and it's kind of it's definitely a specialty. So you should be easily getting some good markups on on that 2 year. You said 2 year house runs 6 to 8, 10 million. Does that mean it takes you 2 years to build it, spec homes? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I mean, if you built, if it took you 2 years to build one house, and you were underbid by, you underbid it by like 15-20%, like, I don't even want to think about I wouldn't even want to think about how much money you lost. I don't get hung up on competition. A lot of people say that. Everybody says there's lots of competition. The only competition you have is your mindset. That's it. It's the only competition. What am I throwing up in PC? Are you talking to John? Are you talking to John to tell him to throw it up in the Profit Club? I don't know who you are. It says Facebook user. I don't know who you are. Yeah, spec homes. It cost me 3 million to gross 6 million. Yeah, you're playing in the big boy pond. Spec homes. You're one of the ones that's figured it out. Your situation probably doesn't apply to 75% of the contractors out there, because you're in that higher end niche market. Anybody else have a numbers they want to throw in here? If not, I'll take this down. But I just wanted to give the opportunity to kind of run some of these numbers through you guys, just to kind of make awareness of where you could be. And if any of you guys like, if you're still on the call, from the windows to the balls and dirty max, and you guys, if you're wanting to know how to do this stuff, this is what I teach contractors how to do. You can always reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share with you what that looks like. Yeah, I appreciate that, Spec Holmes. I wish I had somebody like what I do. I wish somebody was like that around early when I first started. It would have saved me years of headache. I was making fun of Dirty Max earlier about his name, because I could have been called the dirtiest Max. I was doing myself the dirtiest to the maximum. It could be dirtiest Maximus. Yeah, dirty. Don't just check it out more. Like, you could start taking action today. It's one thing I don't get about contractors. I know it's a blue collar, conservative, mostly conservative type of nature. Very skeptical. It takes you like 6 months to make a decision to invest in yourself, but it doesn't have to. I tell guys, pay now or pay later. Pay Brad. I appreciate it. One of the most frustrating things, I shouldn't say frustrating. Well, it is frustrating, but it's actually heartbreaking for me. The thing that it's the most heartbreaking for myself is whenever I get a contractor on a call to see if they want to get coaching, and they tell me their business, and it's like I know with 100% certainty that I could help this contractor and like literally change their lives, and they won't go in on themselves. They won't believe in their own ability, and they don't take action. That is the most heartbreaking. And then 6 months later or a year later, I follow up with them, and they're either not in business anymore or they're still in the exact same position, but yet they don't wanna make any changes. That is the most heartbreaking, because a lot of people I talk to, they're they won't be a good fit. They either have a specific type of business that I don't really help, or they just have a very closed-minded, they don't wanna grow, they just want a magic bullet. Those type of people I don't really wanna help, and I don't try to help them. But the ones that I know, like, they have the right mindset. I mean, in terms of they wanna do right, they have a great product, like an amazing product, and they're primed to do well, and they just don't go in on themselves. They don't go in 100% on themselves. That's the most heartbreaking. Yeah, 100%. So, I wish I could help everybody, but I can't do the work for you. You have to take a chance on yourself. John says that was me 3 months before I signed up. Life changing. I appreciate that, John. It's crazy. And by the way, I was that guy too. I remember the first time I checked into getting coaching. This was specifically a sales program. Like they teach you how to sell, right? And I checked it out. They had a thing where you could sign up for a month and then cancel within 30 days and get your money back. So I did that. I signed up for the month, you know, didn't really fully implement anything that they taught. And then I canceled at the end of the month and got my money back. And I was like, I need my money back. You better, I thought it was a scam. I need my money back. And they did. They gave me the money back. And a whole year went by of me trying to do it on my own. And then a year later, I end up joining that coaching program after that, and then that basically changed how I did everything. But it took me an entire year, even after gaining the knowledge, or at least the knowledge that there's a different way of doing stuff. And I did adopt a few things out of there, but it was like 10%. I applied like 10% of that to my business, which wasn't enough to really make a difference. It made a tiny difference. But a whole year went by of not making very much money before I finally signed up, finally implemented it, and then started making money, right? So, like, this isn't lost on me. I was the exact same person that did that. It's just heartbreaking to see others do that because it's either a pride thing or a financial thing. And I get the financial thing because I remember when the very first thing I ever paid for was like $60, and it was like like a 2-hour training, and it was like $60, and I was like, this $60 this better be worth it. I thought $60 was a lot. I have to laugh at myself now with the ridiculousness of it. But it was a struggle for me to spend $60 on a training. Right now, in the last 2 years, I've spent almost $60,000 on training for myself, on coaching and programs just for myself. So from $60 being way too much to $60,000, and can't wait to spend $100,000 on training. That's how far the mindset had to go. That's how far I had to shift mindsets to go from, oh, it's an expense, to this is an investment. And the more money that I've spent on myself, the more I've invested in myself in learning and networking and getting around the right people, my income has gone up exponentially. So if his stuff didn't work, and by the way, I'm not the only business coach out there. There's lots of other ones. There's lots of good ones out there. If the stuff didn't work, they wouldn't be in business because people wouldn't pay for it. So you have to look at it objectively and see, well, if this program has, 15, 20, 100 case studies or 100 testimonials about how it works, then there is a certain level of certainty that it works. So at that point, it just becomes of, do I want to get better or not? If we know factually that something works, but we choose not to invest in it, and then we use finances as a reason not to invest in it, then it's just a roundabout way of saying I'm not going all in on myself. That's all it is. A friend of mine owns a e-commerce business. He started it in his garage, and I knew him from high school. I played soccer with him. He's a couple years younger. And I ran into him later on in life. He was in the Marines. I went in the Marines. He was an officer, and he called me to come do some work on his house. And he had just started his business, like 1 year in, very minimal success, running it out of his garage full time. And he was selling like bed linens and sheets and stuff like that. And fast forward about, I guess it's been about 12, probably about 14, maybe about 14, 15 years later, he's a multimillionaire, owns a multi-million-dollar business that he started out of his garage. And the only way he was able to do that is he took out a second mortgage on his house. He maxed out his credit cards. I mean, he went, probably over $100,000 in debt and just went all in on himself and then just took massive action. And as a result, he's now a multimillionaire. And I got to see along the way, because every time he would call me, he's like, hey, I just got a new warehouse. I need to build some tables. I need to do this. I need to have this work done. And then, a year or two later, hey, we just bought another building. We're expanding. We're moving. Can you come? So I kind of got to see glimpses of his progress as he scaled. And it was fascinating because I would show up and it was just him by himself the first time. And then, 6 months later, he's got 3 employees. And then a year and a half later, he's got 10 employees. And then 2 years later, he's got 30 employees, and just growing and scaling and growing and scaling. The point of that story is that he maxed out every single ounce of credit that he could. And he told me, he said, I know that if this thing fails, I can just go back to being a bartender and make $100,000 a year. That, if this whole thing crashes down and burns, I know I can go back and be a bartender and make good money. But he's like, I don't want to do that. I'm going all in. And his family told him he was stupid, and his friends told him he was stupid. I mean, he's selling bed sheets. He's selling bed sheets online. That sounds like the dumbest thing you could ever sell. He's now a multimillionaire. He's on the Forbes 500, one of the fastest growing companies in Indiana. I mean, it's truly remarkable. But the point of that story is that he went all in on himself. And you guys are not going all in on yourself. You have no problem justifying buying a $20,000 bass boat. No problem justifying buying a four-wheeler or guns or going on vacations or doing all of these different things, because that it makes your lifestyle better. But for heaven forbid you spend money on yourself to get better. No, I can't do that. Don't want to do that. Let me see if I can save up for 6 months. The last 3 years in business, I haven't made a penny. But now that I've talked to you, I'm going to somehow miraculously change my mindset and then start making a bunch of money. And then maybe in 3 to 6 months, I'll have enough money to join your program so that I can get better. No, that's not how it works. You're in the boat that you're in because you don't have the correct mindset. You don't have the correct knowledge. You have to invest in that in order to get it so that you can get to where you want to go. It doesn't work the other way around, guys. You're not going to miraculously just start making more money. Some of you will be able to just charge more, 100% markup, and get there. And you won't really need to do anything else. Some of you will be able to do that and you'll have success. Some of you will try to do that and you'll get the next 10 leads that come in will tell you you're too expensive. And you'll say, well, I tried it. That Brad guy on the internet told me I needed to mark it up. I tried it. 10 jobs I lost. It doesn't work. And that's not the reality. The reality of it is, if you don't know how to present the information, if you don't know how to do sales, if you don't know how to market yourself, those all factor into that. So it's not just one little thing. There's multiple things you got to know how to do. Right. And so if you don't do it correctly, it's not going to work for you. And then you'll just go back to the old ways of like, well, I'll just do a 20% markup because I tried doing 100% and I couldn't get a job. So I'll just go back to what I knew how to do. And then, a year later, you're burnt out because you're only going to make X amount per year. And the only way you're going to make more money is to hire more people or work more hours. And both of those are a recipe for disaster if you're not getting the correct margin. That is the path. Yeah, Spec Holmes, you can't spin your way out of a bad business plans. And you can't hire your way out of it either. Believe it or not, you can't hire more people to solve your problems. That's why literally right here, number 4 of the profit blueprint is scale and systematize. It's not number 1, it's not number 2 or 3, it's the 4th step. It's the last step. Because if you don't have the right mindset, if you don't have the right pricing, and if you don't have your sales and marketing in order, then scaling and systematizing your business is not going to help you. It's just going to exacerbate the problem. Spec Holmes, we all were that guy. If I could do one thing over, get a coach 25 years ago. Yeah, 100%. 100%. He said, I started with $50, went super lean, invested into myself, first 9 months, 300 up. That's awesome. Hey, what's up, Facebook user? Hello. So, guys, I'll wind this down. If you got any other questions, throw them in there. I'll answer them for you. If not, we'll hop off here. I appreciate you hanging out with me, and hopefully this was a little bit helpful to see what some of the opportunities are that you can do in your business. You can get this calculator. If you guys are just jumping on here, I had this is the calculator. You can get this. It's a very simple calculator. There's nothing special about it. It's just a simple tool that you can throw in how you mark up your jobs and see how much money you may be leaving on the table. It's not an exact science, but it's going to get you pretty close. So a lot of people that put these numbers in, it kind of gives them a shock factor. It really does, because there's a lot of potential, a lot of money being left on the table every single day. So across the board, let's just get our prices up there and get our profit margins up there. By the way, if you start charging correctly, if you start getting the correct profit margins, you actually can do less work. So those of you that are working like 60, 70 hours a week and you're barely making money, the way you work less hours is by charging more. That's it. I think it's pretty common sense that if you're doing like, say, 30 jobs a year now and you're stressed out, that if you only did 25 jobs a year and made more money, most people would say, sign me up for that, because doing 25 jobs a year is easier than doing 30 jobs a year. And if you can do 25 and make 15% more money than you are at 30 jobs, that's a good day. That's a good year. That's a good business. So the answer to all of the problems is charge more. So a lot of you guys don't even need more work. I mean, you have a helper, maybe 2 guys, maybe a 3-guy team, and you're thinking, oh, I got to have 2 teams. I got to have 3 teams. No, you don't. Some of you only need to charge more. And if you do that, you'll make an extra $50,000 to $100,000 a year, have a good life and an easy business, and you'll be perfectly happy with that. You don't need to have 3 teams. Now, if you want to scale to 10, 15, $20 million business, then yeah, you'll have to do that eventually. But a lot of you guys are stuck under 500,000 a year, and you're going to be stuck there unless you start charging more. So, All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate your attention. If you need more help in your business, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you. I even got lots of different resources available for you. So I appreciate it. Let me know. See what we can do. Thanks, guys. See you next time.